Happy weekend, everybody. Happy Saturday to you. I'm Simone Malone, your radio feel-good man, one of your most trusted and respected voices in radio. What a delight to be able to come to you live out of Studio 236. I just got off the radio earlier today with Dr. Carter J. Cloyd, my colleague who works at the consortium. He is a licensed clinical psychologist from Philadelphia and New Jersey, 2 states. You know how difficult that is? He's making a difference. Well, today we want to talk about his life and also talk about depression, and a little bit we want to touch on the personality disorders. You know, many of you who watch me and listen to me on a daily basis know I'm very passionate about my work in broadcasting and also for what I do in mental health, because my goal is to help solve somebody's problem. And I know that that's what Dr. Carter does every single day. We help to solve somebody else's problem, because when we're solving somebody else's problem, we know that God is solving ours. So to say that, I want to welcome the one and only Dr. Carter J. Cloyd to FMHDMS. What a delight to have you, sir.
I'm glad to be here.
Did you enjoy yourself on the radio?
Absolutely. I thought it was a great time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Let's talk a little bit about your upbringing and why you wanted to get into mental health, because you've been doing this for quite some time, and this is truly your assignment.
Well, I was actually born at Westover Air Force Base in Massachusetts, and I grew up until age 10 in a small town in Tennessee in Bristol. And then our family moved to Philadelphia. When we moved to Philadelphia, I was doing well in school, and they recommended that I go to an alternative school in order to be challenged. And at that school, I met a teacher who was a psychology teacher. I was impressed. It was like, oh man, I want to do that. I want to do that.
Right.
And at 16, I went off to Penn State to become a psychologist, and I've never looked back. That's all I've ever wanted to do. So wonderful. That's what I do.
Wonderful. So my question that I asked you on the radio, and you know you can be yourself right here while we have plenty of our viewers watching us. What do you consider as a healthy mind?
A healthy mind is a complicated situation. It's one that's devoid of illness, and devoid of problems. A healthy mind is one that can make adaptations and maintain balance in spite of difficulty. So that's what I think a healthy mind is. If you have a person who can change when change is required in order to make an appropriate adjustment, then I think you have pretty much a healthy mind.
Right. But in this day and times that we're living in, we know with so much violence in our communities, with the police brutality, it's hard for people to live their lives in balance. It's hard for them to trust people. It's hard for them to function in a healthy mind because of the things that's happening in our communities and all over the world. So what advice can you share to our viewers about trying their best to live a healthy mind and to avoid being really depressed? I mean, you know, every day we turn on the television, we hear these shootings with children. It could just totally put us in a withdrawal state.
Well, this is what I want to tell you. They used to have a saying, garbage in, garbage out. If you spend a lot of time...
The doctor's always needed.
If you spend a lot of time taking in negative information, then you're going to spend a lot of time processing negative information, and that's going to be unhelpful to you. So I suggest, if you want to maintain your balance and your healthiness, that the thing that you need to do is to take in an appropriate amount of positive information as well as negative information. Don't stay focused on negative. Because what you take in and what you eat and what you digest is what you're going to become. So try to find positive aspects of your life.
But it's very hard, Dr. Carter, for many people and to process and separate the positive from the negative. And I really believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, it starts with having a positive self-image, having some worth about yourself, knowing your dominant gifts of who you are, because we all have gifts and talents and abilities. Am I right?
You're right.
So it's a big concern.
Right.
It's a big concern.
Right. So I think one thing that you can do is it's sort of like a car or automobile. When you find yourself pulling to the right a lot, you go into the shop and you get a front end alignment. Or
Right.
if it's pulling to the left, you go in and you try to get a front end alignment. And sometimes we all need to do that. We need to um, do things that restore us
Right.
to our appropriate settings. And some of those things could be, well, I'll have a spiritual life
Right.
that'll restore me to my setting. I have good friends, they help restore me to my setting. I have a good relationship with other people. That helps me restore me to my initial settings. And so those things happen, and they are helpful. But what happens when you go too far to the right or too far to the left is then you might need to seek out some professional service and ask for a counselor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist to help realign you and bring you back into focus on your better self.
Great. Let's talk about something that people deal with on a daily basis. One, depression, and I want you to touch on anxiety because somebody out there may be dealing with this right now personally or in your family, depression and anxiety. And we're going to touch a little bit on the personality issues.
Okay.
Many people are depressed.
Yes.
Can't find a job, no money, relationships, just a whole gamut of things.
Right.
What can you share as a professional clinician on how to deal with depression?
Okay. From my perspective, and I'm trained as a cognitive behavioral therapist, from my perspective, depression from a CBT point of view has to do with your thoughts about your situation. And oftentimes, our thoughts are negative. We predict negative outcomes. We see others as being negative about us. We think about ourselves in negative or derogatory ways. So these thoughts patterns that we have aren't helpful to us. And if we have a physiology or a biology or a biological predisposition for depression, and then we develop thinking that's unhelpful to us, then that keeps us depressed. My job as a therapist is to help people reassess their thinking about situations so that they don't always end up having a negative feeling about things.
Gotcha.
Okay? So I'll get up tomorrow. I think that I'm going to be successful in securing employment. That's a more positive thought than if I wake up tomorrow, there's no chance for me to get any better.
Right.
I should just lay here. Well, that's counter-indicated if you want to feel better. So we got to change the thoughts, and we got to motivate people to get up out of bed and to go forth as if something good is going to happen at the end of the day.
Awesome. Let's touch on great information, Dr. Carl. Let's touch on anxiety. How many people do I talk to? They're having an anxiety issue. Maybe you might be dealing with that. Let's hear from Dr. Carter. What advice can you share with people who are anxious? It is normal to have anxiety, but for people that have a very severe problem with it.
Right. Well, if you have a severe problem with anxiety, I guess the best way to know that is if how much of your life is it negatively affecting? Are you unable to do things that you used to be able to do, and now because of your anxiety you're unable to complete even the basic tasks that you used to do? Or other people more concerned about you lately? Then that might be an opportunity, a time for you to take the opportunity to go see a professional. Anxiety, based on from a clinical perspective, a CBT perspective, it also revolves around your thoughts about situations and your feelings about those situations. For instance, if you think something bad is going to happen, you have anticipatory anxiety. You're anticipating something bad, and that will keep you anxious, and it will stop you from doing things that you might otherwise do. So you have to say to yourself, hey, listen, I don't want to continue my life like this.
Right.
I want to find another way to enjoy my life and have a better quality of life. So then you seek out a professional that can help you realign your thinking about your life situation.
Great information. Let's tap on, and I hope you guys are getting some great information from Dr. Carter. This is very dear to my heart. I've been wanting to have him here for quite some time. let's talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. Define what that is and how people can be better at dealing with that.
Okay. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a mental health problem that you experience physiologically, psychologically, and it affects your life as you go through it. What happens is if you're exposed to maybe some traumatic event, a friend gets shot and killed in front of you, you see a car accident, someone is dismembered or hurt, some terrible event. Oftentimes we think about PTSD, we think about soldiers who go off to war.
Right.
And who are all of a sudden they're exposed to death, dying, killing, or anything tragic, and then they change. They become very stressed by it. They start having these common reactions, like they want to avoid situations or places that remind them of the situation. They have reoccurring nightmares or bad dreams about things. They start feeling nervous or anxious or worried about things, and they can't tell you why. They avoid thinking about the trauma event. They avoid going to places that trigger the trauma event. So these are some of the things. Sometimes they have a feeling of numbness. Sometimes they have a feeling of depression or anxiety. So it could be anybody who has seen or been witness to or been a part of a traumatic event, like 9/11 was a traumatic event. A lot of people watched that, so that they become much more fearful and much more cautious and much more concerned about being vulnerable in ways that they had not thought of before.
I got you.
Okay.
Okay. Now we want to touch on, as we get ready to wrap things up.
Let me say
this.
Sure,
go ahead, Doc.
There are some good treatments that are available for depression and for PTSD.
Okay.
Currently, the city, in coordination or in collaboration with the University of Pennsylvania, are training community mental health providers in things such as cognitive behavioral therapy, which is an exceptional tool to use to treat people with depression and anxiety. And there's evidence and research that indicates that these are effective strategies to help people get better. And they're also teaching community mental health centers about prolonged exposure, which is a 10 to 15 session PTSD treatment that dramatically changes the quality of life of people who have suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right. And for more information about that, we can give the phone number. You can reach you
at Consortium, which is 215-748-8400. That's at Consortium, and that's 215-748-8400.
You will not be disappointed. Now let's touch on, as we get ready to wrap things up and let you share your final word, personality traits, personality disorders. Some of you out there that's watching and listening know that maybe you might be dealing with the issue with your personality. We meet people all the time that we want them to like us, we want them to support us, we want them to be a part of us, to be in our circle of concern and circle of influence. I want to touch on the borderline personality. I want to touch on the narcissistic personality. Narcissistic. I got you.
Narcissistic.
Oh, narcissistic.
Yes.
It's one of those big words.
Yes.
And I'm sure people screw it up all the time.
They do.
And the obsessive compulsive. Let's just go through a few of those and talk about them and how people can get support with that.
Okay. One of the things that, as a cognitive behavioral therapist, that I sort of believe or I attest to is that there are some basic common elements to all of these characterological disorders. And when I say characterological disorders, I'm saying a part of a person's personality that is rigid and consistent across time. You know, that person has always done it that way. They always do it that way. They come in, they line up their glasses all in a row, the plates are all stacked right in a row. That kind of personality where, you know, 10 years from now, they'll still be doing the same thing. And you'll say, wow, that person sure is rigid. That's what we talk about when we're talking about a characterological disorder. It's one that is persistent and prevalent in the person, and you could identify them by that characteristic. as a CBT therapist, what we think is that there's a biological and physiological predisposition to respond to stimulus in the environment in a particular way. When you take that, say, anxious person that has a little, they're born with a little anxious, or a person who's born a little avoidant, or any of those things, what happens later in their life, early childhood and a little bit later, or some kind of traumatic event, that layers on top of the biological predisposition and creates a sort of characterological disorder that we see later on in life.
Okay.
And those things are based upon our beliefs about other people, our beliefs about ourselves, our beliefs about the world and the future. An avoidant person may believe that, listen, nobody likes me, nothing's going to work out my way, so I'm just going to avoid everything. I'm going to avoid people. I'm going to avoid trying to get that job because I'm just going to get rejected.
Right.
I'm going to avoid doing everything. Anything that comes up that might be challenging or difficult, they will persistently avoid, right? So they've got strategies that they use across the board. They say, hey, listen, if I don't try, I can't fail.
Right.
Or if I don't put myself out there, I won't have a problem. So these things are layered on top of the biological predisposition, upon the belief system about the world, the self, others, and they develop into a personality disorder. And that's what makes it so rigid and difficult to deal with. So our goal is to pull away those layers, help them to learn new strategies. Well, I think something bad is going to happen. Well, let's test that out.
Sure.
Let's see. And when they test it out and find out that nothing bad happens when they were anticipating something bad to happen, then they can begin to change that personality structure so that they are more flexible, more plastic, more able to make changes in the way that they do things, and then they can be more healthy.
Good.
So that's what we're trying to do. With these personality disorders, they're there. We're going to find people with them all the time.
Right.
The question is that person with that personality disorder aware that they might want to change it? And that's where it comes in. When you have a person who has narcissistic personality disorder, they feel like they're doing things well. They feel like they're coping well. They only come in if it's demanded of them by other people.
Right.
Because they think they're doing the best. Right? So personality disorders sometimes can be a very difficult disorder to deal with. And our thinking about personality disorders have changed a lot too. We used to think that each personality disorder was a separate individual classification of a type of person.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've come to the realization that each personality disorder may have layers of other disorders involved in it. So it's much more complicated than it appears.
Very complex.
Right.
Let's touch on a little bit on borderline and then the dependent personality, the codependency. A lot of us in life, we need each other to survive, but some of us are just so codependent.
Right, right. So people who have dependency needs and people who are borderline can be characterized as borderline personality disorders, or people who also start out with a biological or physiological predisposition to behave in a certain way. Once they start to grow and develop, they have life experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And those life experiences make them develop beliefs about themselves or beliefs about others, their world, or their future. Sometimes it's a bad event that, look, gee, I was going to be, somebody was taking me somewhere, and they let me down. It was tragic. So now they feel like, oh, I can't depend on people at all. I'm talking about a borderline personality disorder. I can't depend on people at all, so I have to be very close to them. I have to watch them all the time, or I'll be abandoned. Something bad will happen to me. So then that's how the personality starts to develop.
Right.
The same thing happens for the dependent personality. Listen, when I was left alone by myself, something tragic happened, so I was not capable. I was incompetent. I couldn't figure it out. So I have to attach myself to someone else who's strong so I won't be vulnerable. So nothing bad will happen to me. And then it's very hard for them to change that thinking about how they go through the world and how they interact with other people. The same thing for narcissistic personalities. They may feel insecure, but what happens is they have an experience that makes them feel even more secure, and they say, aha, my strategy from now on will be to act superior to everyone else.
Yes.
So now I won't get hurt or won't be vulnerable. So what we have to do is we have to help them understand that how they have chosen to cope with the world has some advantages, but there are also a lot of disadvantages.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can change your coping strategy to match the situation, you're much better off than when you use the same coping strategy for every situation that comes up. That becomes the problem. Okay?
Great information. Well, I'm just sitting here taking it all in from the professor himself, my wonderful colleague, Dr. Carter J. Cloyd. What do you want to say in conclusion? Because I got a lot of key things here that we need to live our lives in balance.
Okay.
And,
I would say that.
And surround ourselves with people that are positive.
Right. I would say that too. I would say that if you can, try to evaluate your thoughts about situations, because every time you evaluate your thoughts about situations, then you're not just running on automatic. Try to consider others, try to consider yourself, and try to consider the world in a way that's more balanced than saying, hey, it's all negative or it's all good, it's all terrible. Try to find some balance in it. And when you can't find balance in it, seek professional help. Your friends, your loved ones, your family, they can give you some advice, but what you really need is professional help, not necessarily friends and family giving you suggestions, because sometimes their view of the world is also skewed. And what you want is clean, concise information about yourself so that you can make a determination of what a realistic goal for you might be in terms of your own personal development.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, the wisdom, the knowledge from Dr. Carter, my dear colleague from the consortium. For more information, if you need help in supporting, you want to reach Dr. Carter, even though you could be watching this and be far distance from Philadelphia, you could call 215-748-8400, 215-748-8400. I hope that you all would take the information, the advice that he shared, and apply it to your life, because we want you to live your life in balance, and we want you to live your best life. Give yourself what you need to feel whole and good each day. I oftentimes say, spending time with yourself, spending time with God, spending time with people that truly, truly care about you. Dr. Carter, I thank you so much for being here. The question I have for the doctor himself, is my mind healthy?
He's very healthy.
You all got the answer. So don't question Simone. Don't question me if my mind is healthy. I have a healthy mind. Remember to trust God and give your best every day. And we thank you so much for joining us right here live out of Studio 236. Once again, for more information, you can find him at the consortium, 215-748-8400. And seek out help. You cannot do this alone. If you're depressed, you're having anxiety, you're feeling a certain way, and you're not getting the help you need, we are here in Philadelphia to help you. Dial that number now, 215-748-8400. Take care, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Carter. Let's wave at everybody. Stay healthy. Bye-bye.